Welcome to Tattooed Freaks in Business Suits, recorded live in the kitchen of the Personal Touch Career Services in Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Donna Shannon. As a professional career coach, I help people navigate the hiring maze to get to jobs they really love. So in addition to working with job seekers one-on-one, I do have a book available. You can find Get a Job Without Going Crazy on Amazon, on my website, or in a whole bunch of other places too. So my guest today is Michelle McGlade, and I'll have her introduce herself in just one moment. So for those of you who don't know, our show's purpose is to really explore and redefine the world of work, especially as Gen X, millennials, and those to come after seek positions of leadership that still allow them to be themselves. So every show, we will explore a topic related to business or job searching. And of course, we're going to talk about tattoos. Our sponsor is the Personal Touch Career Services, Denver's top-rated career coaches. We focus on the practical tools for your job search, including resumes, LinkedIn profiles, interview coaching, and ongoing classes. So check out our ridiculously long website, personaltouchcareerservices.com. Once again, that's personaltouchcareerservices.com, or, you can just Google it. So hi, Michelle. How are you doing today?
I am lovely. Thank you so much, Donna, for having me on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's just dive right into things. Why don't you tell me a bit about yourself?
Oh my gosh, a bit. Where do you want me to start? I say, let's see. Most people want to start with something professional. And I like to say that I'm a chief curator of evolution to help you unhide your magic.
Ooh, so what does that mean?
Well, it means that I've got a lifetime of experience like all of us, and that I have for myself been able to take that commitment to continuing to evolve to the next level, to the next best version of who I am. And now I have an extreme passion using a framework that I've developed in a lifetime of experience to help others do the same.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. So before you started doing all of this, what was your background like?
So I followed, a very traditional background. I think many of your listeners can relate to, you go to college, you get a good job. That's the mantra I heard in my home. So that's exactly what I did. And I spent about 15 years in corporate. I started in finance and pulled the all-nighters, closing the books at the end of the quarter, end of the year, that sort of thing, but ended up getting courted away by sales leadership. That's who I worked with mostly in my roles, and went into a long career of business development. Yeah. Right. The thing is I was quite a high performer, and I just, wasn't getting to where I wanted to be. I felt unsettled. I felt unsatisfied. I was, looking very successful on the outside, but not feeling very successful on the inside at that time. And I think I just had enough crazy and enough courage to say, you know what, I'm going to take the leap and try something different and start my own business. And that was about 10 years ago. And that journey has now taken me on more iterations and more, more evolution for myself in my life and my business.
Oh, great. Great. So one of the things you mentioned is about people hiding themselves. So what does this hiding thing actually entail?
Yeah, I didn't really know myself, honestly. So I have been in the podcasting space since 2015. And last year I had just launched a brand new show. I was, kind of like living my podcasting dream in the sense of interviewing very successful CEOs and very large companies and self-starters as well, entrepreneurs. And I had this little tap on my shoulder about like late summer last year. I don't know if you do your podcast in seasons, but I was doing seasons. So I was taking a break. I was thinking about the strategy, it was kind of an untraditional year, if you will. And I'm like, what are we doing for the next segment of the show? And I had this little tap, this little nudge, this little voice in my head that said, Michelle, what if you're using podcasting as a way to hide yourself? Like to stay in hiding? Because I loved it so much, but what if by interviewing people, what if by, buying into the story, I love it so much, I was really holding myself back. So I leaned into it, Donna, and every time I tell a story, I just start getting kind of like chills and adrenaline happening because it's just so true for me. In that I came out, I said, I'm going to quit podcasting, quit my own show for until whatever. We haven't gone back to it yet. And I'm just going to start having this conversation because if I feel like I'm hiding, maybe other people feel the same way. And so it wasn't something like I thought up like as a strategy or a great idea. It's just a conversation that I wanted to start having with other individuals, specifically women, specifically really high performing and successful women. And what I found is that 100% of us are hiding in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I did do your quiz. So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that Michelle has that's really great is you can go onto her website and it takes you through this quiz and it goes into some like key areas, not just professionally, but personally. So those are like the 4 areas that you're really hitting, right? So this might be their success, body image, spiritual, and opinions.
Yeah, so I actually didn't just start having the conversation with people. When I realized how this was really hitting a nerve, I went officially to go into research mode, and I spent about 6 months interviewing women, hosting like kind of little focus groups, if you will. I did a community, and yeah, what you're seeing in the quiz are some of the most common ways amongst the high performing women that were part of my research were saying the ways that they were hiding. So as you said, opinions, of course, it's not lost on me, right? That in today's day and age and political environment and socially what's happening, there's a lot of people holding back what they think. But bodies, there's all sorts of ways we feel about how we look, aging, menopause, our weight, but even for young women, just like having acne or, things like that. Women and bodies are super common. Spirituality stood out to me. But there's more. The money, things, all kinds of stigma around money, success, failure. But what really hit home for me is that, and this is why I call it the unhide your magic quiz, is that ultimately what I found is 2 out of 3 women that I, engaged with in my research were saying that they felt like they were hiding their true voice, like their real voice, their real brilliance, their real magic, if you will. They felt like that was being held back and hidden and kept dim. And that is kind of what got me to say, wow, I need to get this out there. I need to get this out there in a much bigger way, because that's just a darn shame, really.
Yeah. I mean, we hear a lot of emphasis these days about being your authentic self.
Yeah.
And in some ways it sounds like less nice and fluffy unicorns and rainbows and stuff like that, but it really does matter.
It does. And, one of the things that I found, honestly, doing the interviews for my show last year is I was talking to some of the most amazing women. And of course, authenticity and vulnerability were part of the conversation, because it is part of the conversation, to your point. And what was always odd for me, and this is my own reflection back, not necessarily about one person or another person, but overall in that body of work, what I really took away from it is that even though it's being talked about in the workplace, or it's emphasized as part of the entrepreneurial journey for success, I still feel like women, especially, I believe men too, but I just don't have as much language around this for them. I think it gets expressed differently, but women especially, it's orchestrated. It's vulnerability to what's acceptable within the culture. It's authenticity around the stories we feel most comfortable telling. But is it really fully all of you? And I think the answer to that is no.
Right. So as part of your study, which areas did you tend to see, women holding back the most, or does it really just vary by individuals?
I've looked at this. I feel like, I'm really thinking about it, because as I continue to have conversations, I get more data and more information. But I think that the ones that you see in the quiz, as you mentioned, are still top of mind. I think bodies, but that is such a huge topic because it's everything from just the things I already described, but to your health status, right? Like how you're feeling in your body, like stress and feeling run down and being busy and not sleeping, and all that stuff can kind of go into how we're treating ourselves. Opinions, I think that's pretty common. Um, the spirituality is a little bit, it would be the one that I would say there's a wide spectrum there, because how people engage with their spirituality, whether it's more religious, Christian, or versus like nature connection. I mean, there's a big spectrum there. And I think there's a wide variety for how that got expressed. But overall, those are the big hitters for sure.
Absolutely. So what happens when somebody actually stops hiding their brilliance?
Yeah, so this was the part that I was like, why is it that all of a sudden because I'm somebody, 10 years entrepreneurship, like once you start your own business, then your issues start coming right up to the forefront. So this is an important piece, I think, for people to understand, is that, I was hitting a ceiling, hitting challenges within my corporate career. Well, when you start your own thing, guess what? Those become amplified. You think it was them, but it was actually you. So I just wanted to point out that part of the story, that you have to start taking self-responsibility, and you'll start seeing those things more clearly for yourself. So I'm someone who's invested a lot of not just time, but money, I would say easily beyond six figures, to help me through coaching, through programs, through, all kinds of self-awareness work to help to begin to unfold this. But I still couldn't break through. I was still hitting a ceiling. I still felt like this unsettled inside, like there's just something a little bit more, there's something a little bit bigger that I want to put out or say, but I couldn't, like, I knew it was there, I was investing, but I couldn't seem to like get it, right? So I was like, what have I been doing that all of a sudden, right, I'm starting to really feel like I can kind of come out of hiding, like you're saying. And a huge piece of it, and there's a 4-part framework that I've been able to put together based on all of my coaching experience, not just this project, but this project really kind of sealed it all together. But the foundational aspect of this is nurturing what I call your internal navigation system. And I think that's the step that most people miss when they're starting to come out of hiding, and you hear it explained in a lot of different ways, but you really need to get grounded within you. You're going to intellectually be able to hear the ways that you can start exploring that you've been hiding, so that maybe you could address those, but you're not going to actually be able to let that armor fall away unless you're in a good mental, emotional, spiritual place with yourself. And so back to your question, just wanted to put a lot of color around that. Sorry. Back to your question, what happens when you come out of hiding? It's not this miraculous, you think it's going to be this miraculous thing, but what it is it's a calming. It's an ending of that unsettled agitation inside of you. It's a solid standing and groundness within yourself that says, everything's great. And you start to see more clearly the stories, the ways that you put yourself into a cage. And instead of, well, one, running around with your head cut off, not being able to see it, you're able to see it, but then you're able to see it without judgment. And when you're able to do that for yourself, the armor falls away and more of who you truly are just naturally bubbles up to the surface. So that magical pixie dust that you've been looking for, it's not as magical as you think it's going to be when you receive it. It's an unfolding and a calmness that starts to envelop you.
Gotcha. So I imagine that there's probably a lot of people who are reluctant to break out of the mold, maybe due to their own personal fears. So what kind of fears do you think hold people back the most?
So there's layers to this. I like to think about it like a cake, right? So when I have an initial chat with somebody and they're thinking, well, I don't hide my opinions, or I don't hide, my spirituality, or I don't hide my money. Okay, that's fine. But as we start to go deeper into the layers, it's not just what's happening in the present moment, it's what's been happening your entire life. And typically our hiding patterns, the ones that were really keeping us in that agitation, that are really keeping us in that unsettled feeling, the ones that we just can't seem to figure out, even though they're like right in front of our face, they were developed many, many moons ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what do they typically go back to? They go back to a really, really good reason to keep us safe. There's a really, really good reason of why we started to put that outfit on, that armor on. If you want, I can provide an example.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the big things for me is that I never like to show my emotions. And like it would horrify, and like literally horrify me if anybody saw me get upset, for example, whether it was just angry or sad or both at work, even with friends or, you know, with my husband. I just didn't like to show my emotions publicly. I like to process them privately and then, you know, come back.
Yeah.
Well, this doesn't serve you all the time. I can tell you, by holding in your emotions, that does not serve you. And I like to believe that I've progressed past that. Like now, if I'm speaking to a group in a room and I get, you know, like get a little bit teary eyed, no problem. I'm able to do that without the discomfort that I had, you know, years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this come from? Why do I feel that way? Well, as early as 2 or 3 years old, I was a very sensitive child. I had a very tumultuous start to the world, very high school aged parents. And so, they fought a lot. And so it was scary for me. And so I just learned that it wasn't okay to cry because I would get yelled at. And so I started to learn at a very young age to hold those emotions in. And it's just something I did automatically without thinking about it. But that ended up not serving me in the long run, but it sure did in the very beginning. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So, kind of getting back into the business side of things. So, what are the impacts on business when leaders actually choose to be more forthright about who they are and expressing their brilliance?
Yeah, you know, I think I've had some conversations with some of the groups I've spoke to, executive leaders and such, and I think that what I really see them taking away in the conversations that we've had is the true power that can come from just getting solid within yourself and the impact that that can have on their culture and their teams in terms of, because like specifically women in the workplace, you know, sure, they want more flexible hours, but they also want a more emotionally intelligent work environment. So that would be a really great tangible example that as leaders within organizations begin to work within, that gets expressed outwardly. I think I'm not in an organization now, so I don't want to pretend like I know it all, but I'm using this as an example because I've had a lot of conversations with women in these roles. And I think that what gets more emphasized is an external in. So our culture is, you know, let's say in an organization, their culture is supporting authenticity and more vulnerability, but that's orchestrated. It's only to a certain extent. Whereas
Right.
if the individual goes there first, they're showing up more solid, more calm, more, you know, good and confident within themselves. It's coming from a place of being, not the other way around.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now we get to one of my favorite parts of the show where we get to talk about the tattoo of the day. But
I love that.
Michelle, you don't have any tattoos.
I know. I was like, when you were telling me about the show, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm a fit for the show, but this sounds like the best show ever.
Well,
You've
the
outed
good
me.
news is, yeah, it's not a requirement to have a tattoo to be on the show. Like I say, I probably have enough to be carry through for everybody. So,
You know, I've gone back and forth on this. Maybe those of you listening will relate to this, but I'm like deathly afraid of needles, not as severely as I am like wasps and bees at this stage in my life, but specifically when I was younger, because I remember going to the doctor quite a bit and getting, I mean, literally that's when they'd still give you the shot in the behind, you know?
yeah.
And I feel like I had quite a few of those that didn't go well. So I was always deathly afraid of needles, but I saw my friends getting them and I always thought, well, maybe I'll come around to it, but I just haven't. I just can't bring myself to do it, but I love them and I think they're beautiful.
Well, here's the thing, kind of getting back on the hiding stuff. I mean, I'm a Gen
Right.
Xer, and there's quite a long-standing joke in the tattoo community. It's like, well, when Gen Xers started getting tattoos, we did do it with business in mind, at least. Most of our tattoos, you start in spots that were easily covered up, and then you gradually work into areas that are more visible all the time. Millennials don't necessarily do that. They start right on the hands, right on the neck to begin with.
Donna, that's such a good point because I remember having conversations with my friends all the time. I'm a Gen Xer too. And it was like everybody I can think of, you're right. They got a tattoo in a place that wasn't visible.
Yeah, even the most recent one I got done, which was October of 2020, was technically a cover up of one on my chest, which was relatively small and still easily covered up with like a button up shirt and still, first top buttons down. But this one, I went all in, man. So it's a full shoulder caps, and it's like a dragon. I know. It's
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it goes a little bit up onto the collarbone. It goes right to the center of my breastbone. And I find myself now, okay, listeners, don't get images of seeing my boobs, okay? When I'm saying I'm wearing lower cut shirts, it's not like those ones that dive all the way down through the cleavage. No, it's like the ones that are like camisole height, right?
Yeah.
And you will totally see that dragon that goes halfway in, right to the breastbone of my chest. And, it took a long time for me to get to the point where I was comfortable showing that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. And it kind of relates to with like what the dragon over the heart symbolizes for me.
Mm-hmm.
So the original one was a tiny dragon that as I got old, nobody could tell what it was anymore. This is what happens with tattoos that are 30 years old, right? Especially if the art wasn't very good in the first place. They just like, what is that blob? I don't know. Is that like a Pegasus, a dragon?
It's
Cloud?
so great that you can reinvent those, though. I love that.
Well, the original tattoo is like, okay, if I'm going to follow my heart and what I'm going to do, I need to protect her. So that's why I got the dragon there. And then this one is like the same idea. He's just built up a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And doesn't look like crap.
You made such a good point, though, and connection to the hiding, because just like you said, showing that much of your body, like I have a weird thing about that myself, like too much skin at one time. So like if I'm wearing like a tank top or something like you're describing, then you're probably going to have pants on. And if I have like a skirt on or something, then I'm going to be covered up top. It's just like a vulnerability thing or something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, the body image and the hiding and stuff like that. I'm a curvy girl. I'm a little bit on the bigger side. I'm 5'8" and I'm 200 pounds or whatever.
You're voluptuous.
Yes. Yes. So the fashion trend that I have the hardest time getting on with is the leggings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, I can't do it unless I'm like got a tunic on that goes all the way down to mid thigh. And,
right.
Just because I don't want people to see my big butt.
Speaking of trends, I can totally relate to you. I feel like women have stuff like that all over. But I was thinking about Gen Xers and fashion trends. And have you seen what the younger generation is wearing? Cut off, like baggy jeans with holes in them and like the plaid shirts. Just as a side note, you said Gen Xers. That was like a 90s thing for all of us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was. Yep.
Oh, funny.
Everything comes back.
It always comes back.
Sort of.
So, tattoo of the day.
I guess that would be the dragon on my chest is the tattoo of the day. Yeah. If you were to get a tattoo, what would you get?
Oh my gosh. I know that it would have a lot of symbolism for me. I know that. And I have so my first businesses when I came out of corporate were in the wellness industry. So I have a background as well in Eastern medicine.
Mhm.
And so I know it would have some sort of culmination of just honestly, the things that I'm talking about, the self-awareness and nature and spirituality and connection with ourselves, as a mind, body, spirit. It would be something like that. It would be very symbol based, but that's all I've got for you.
Mhm.
But I think here's like an interesting tidbit. Like if I do it, like that's the thing. I'm not having like a little tiny something. I'd go big.
Yeah.
I think
Go
I would
big
go
or go
big,
home. Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
I'd be all in or not yet nothing.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to give a shout out. We spoke about the quiz. So if you're interested in taking that, it's unhideyourmagicquiz.com. Otherwise, I'm hanging out on LinkedIn every day, and my website is michellemcglade.com.
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you very much for being on with me. Again, this has been Michelle McGlade. My name is Donna Shannon. My company is Personal Touch Career Services. We're in Denver, but we serve people all across the country. And as my producer always reminds me, got to mention too, the artist for my dragon is Nate Stevens with Marion Street Tattoo in Denver. He has awesome work, mostly known for American traditional, and he does just excellent work. So there you go. There's a shout out to Nate. And as my producer likes to remind me, if you liked what you heard here, give us a like, give us a follow, maybe leave us a comment. If you didn't like it, keep it to yourself. The world is mean enough as it is. All right. Thanks once again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Donna.